Надеемся, что сегодняшний вебинар будет максимально для всех полезным.
Здравствуйте, Виктория. Взаимно. Рад вас увидеть. Hi, Hazel.
Hi, lovely to see you.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники. Сейчас м, уже пару минут прошло. Я думаю, что мы можем начать сегодняшний вебинар и также будем по ходу также впускать всех остальных. Уважаемые участники, от имени команды Дарья Scaffold позвольте поприветствовать вас на втором вебинаре, посвященном профессиональному развитию педагогов. Мы очень рады видеть всех вас сегодня. Прежде чем переходить к содержательной части, давайте на минутку задержимся на технических вопросах. В первую очередь, пожалуйста, дайте мне знать, хорошо ли меня слышно или видно. Можете написать сообщение, можете голосом ответить, как вам будет удобно. В
Здравствуйте, вас
случае...
отлично слышно и видно.
Прекрасно, спасибо большое. Также хотелось бы отметить, что, как и все наши открытые вебинары, сегодняшняя наша сессия будет записываться. Мы размещаем запись для тех, кто сегодня не смог подключиться, а также, если вы захотите вернуться к сегодняшней сессии, вы всегда сможете пройти по ссылке и просмотреть вебинар заново. Чтобы предоставить возможность всем нашим участникам прослушать вебинар без помех, пожалуйста, отключите все свои микрофоны на время выступления нашего сегодняшнего эксперта. И также последний момент. Сегодняшний вебинар будет проводиться на английском языке с синхронным переводом на русский. Позже для того, чтобы прослушать вебинар на русском языке, пожалуйста, в нижней части вашего экрана найдите значок глобуса и выберите перевод с английского на русский. И тогда вы сможете прослушать всю сессию без всяких проблем. И также буквально хотелось бы посвятить пару минут для того, чтобы рассказать о контексте нашего сегодняшнего вебинара и всей нашей работы. Мы организовываем вебинары в рамках DARYA SCAFFOLD, вы прекрасно об этом знаете. И DARYA SCAFFOLD – это часть инициативы Европейского Союза DARYA – диалог и действия для находчивой молодежи Центральной Азии, которую реализует Европейский фонд образования в тесном сотрудничестве с национальными органами Казахстана, Кыргызстана, Таджикистана, Туркменистана и Узбекистана, которые отвечают за образование и развитие навыков в каждой из республик. Инициатива Дарья, она поддерживает стратегию Европейского Союза Global Gateway. В частности, Дарья Scaffold направлена на укрепление систем профессионального образования и обучения в 5 странах Центральной Азии. Как вы знаете, в рамках Дарья Scaffold мы стараемся создавать не только образовательные мероприятия, как сегодняшние, но мы также хотим создать живое профессиональное сообщество и также разрабатываем очень много полезных ресурсов. Для этого у нас есть 2 пространства, которые мы хотели бы, о которых мы вам бы хотели напомнить. Первое – это Telegram-сообщество Дарья Scaffold. Там, как вы многие уже знаете, кто там уже состоит, сообщество состоит из более 900 участников, и мы публикуем там самые последние новости, анонсы всех наших мероприятий. Поэтому все, кто там еще не состоит, эта платформа стоит того, чтобы пройти по ссылке и присоединиться. Второе пространство – это мини-сайт Дарья Scaffold. Это наша вторая такая большая библиотека ресурсов, где мы размещаем практические материалы, вдохновляющие примеры имплементации Scaffold во всех странах Центральной Азии, а также календарь будущих мероприятий. Совсем недавно, кто, возможно, из вас уже был на последнем вебинаре международном, у нас появились цифровые карточки Scaffold. Мы также размещаем, как я упоминала ранее, все записи вебинаров на данном мини-сайте. Поэтому, пожалуйста, пройдите по ссылкам, которые сейчас у вас расположены в чате. Можете их сохранить для будущего использования. Теперь хотелось бы перейти к сегодняшнему вебинару. Можно будет, пожалуйста, второй слайд. Он является вторым из 6 вебинаров, которые посвящены профессиональному развитию педагогов. Первый вебинар у нас был проведен доктором Расселом Григом, где мы уже говорили о важности контекста среды обучения в профессиональном развитии. Как вы видите на слайде, вас ждут еще 5 вебинаров, включая сегодняшний, и вы сможете пройти полный путь от понимания контекста до обмена опытом с коллегами в рамках профессионального развития педагогов. Напоминаю то, что календарь всех вебинаров доступен на нашей мини-странице, а также все анонсы вебинаров будут публиковаться в Telegram-группе. Сейчас я с удовольствием передаю слово нашему сегодняшнему эксперту Хейзел Израил, вы прекрасно ее знаете, который является соавтором карточек Scaffold и ведущим экспертом команды DARYA SCAFFOLD.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's really great to see you here today, and thank you. As Victoria said, we appreciate that you are very busy, and we're very happy to see you here today, having taken the time to explore this topic with us today. So thank you and welcome. So today we focus on an essential part of competence-based learning, and that is how questioning can stimulate curiosity and creativity, and how we can plan for this intentionally. So this session relates to the planning phase in the scaffold model, the stage where we make decisions that shape the quality of thinking and the quality of learning. So I am going to speak quite slowly for translation, and I invite you to reflect as we go. But before we start, please type in the chat, what do you hope to take away from this webinar? What are you hoping to learn more about today? Everything. Great.
Hello, Hazel.
Hello.
We are glad to see and hear you.
It's lovely to see you too. Thank you. So anybody got any expectations for today or things that you would like to know more about?
I'd like to improve my knowledge about scaffold, Daria.
Great. That's good. Well, I think we will certainly be doing that today. Anybody else got anything particular that they would like to get out of today? Okay.
Hello. Unfortunately, I have missed the first webinar, so that's why my expectations are great. So hopefully I will gain everything that is expecting and awaiting. So
Great.
yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we were anticipating that you would probably want to see things like practical examples, strategies, and perhaps to build a little confidence in designing better, more effective questions. And that's exactly what we plan to explore today. Could we have the next slide, please, Ayana? So oh, sorry. Oh, great. Oh. Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, that's perfect. That is what we will be doing today. Great. Thank you. So it's the slide before this one, please, Ayana, with the aims of the session. There we are. That's great. Thank you. So the aim then of this morning's session or this evening's session is simple but powerful. So the aim is to strengthen your understanding of how questioning supports curiosity and creativity, and how you can intentionally plan questions using scaffold. So today is not about asking more questions, it's about asking better questions. Questions that open thinking, spark imagination, and create deeper learning. And we're hoping that by the end of this session, you will have a clearer understanding of questioning in competence-based learning, a set of question types and question stems, a planning routine you could use tomorrow or later tomorrow probably, because it's quite late where you are, and an example of how Scaffold supports question planning. So if we could have the next slide, please. When you think of good questioning then, so we'll begin by hearing from you, where please write one word in the chat that describes good questioning. So what's good questioning to you? If you could write in the chat. Yes, good. But lovely. Stimulating questions, questions which make others think.
Also typology.
Different types of questions, yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Motivating.
Motivating questions, lovely. So these raising critical thinking, yes, great. Thank you. So these words then are beginning to give us a sense of the sorts of questioning that we want. These words already tell a story. They show that questioning is not just a technique, but it's a mindset. It's an attitude. It involves openness, curiosity, and a willingness to let learners explore ideas. I often say the quality of learning will depend on the quality of questions. And this simple warm-up helps us think about the beliefs that we bring into our classrooms. What do we believe to be good questions? So in many traditional systems, questioning is used mostly to check what learners know. But in competence-based learning and education, questioning becomes a tool for activating thinking, not only assessing it. So it's to prompt deeper thought, more critical engagement, open up to more creative possibilities. Could we have the next slide, please? So these four words then, curiosity, exploration, creativity, and learning, these four words describe the journey of learning. Curiosity is the spark, the moment a learner wants to know more, that motivation that was mentioned previously. Exploration is the process. Learners try, test, investigate, and play with ideas. Creativity is the outcome. So learners connect ideas and create or generate something new. And learning is the result. Deeper understanding comes as a result of this questioning because the learner has been actively involved. So well-planned questioning supports each of those steps on the learning journey. So when you think about a question like, what did you notice? It encourages observation. Or if we ask the question, what happens if we change one thing? This creates experimentation. Or can you think of a new way to do this? This opens creativity. And when we see questioning as a way to lead learners through these four stages, we transform the learning process. So if we could have the next slide, please. Lovely. So 2 questions, 2 results. So we've got 2 sort of tasks or questions, if you like. The first A is list the parts of a plant. So this is a very common task. just assessing recall. B, how might we find out which part of a plant helps it to grow strongest? So this slide demonstrates one of the simplest truths in education. The question you ask determines the thinking you get. So let's compare then. Question A is factual. It checks recall, and learners stop when they have listed the parts. Question B, in contrast, is investigative. Question B invites curiosity, prediction, experimentation, teamwork, and reasoning. So the difference then, A is very much a closed question with a list of right answers, whereas B is open, exploratory, creative, and builds competence. So that's why planning questions matters. It's important. So which of these question types, A or B, will lead to deeper learning? That's a very quick, simple quiz for you. If you can please type in the chat, A or B, which type of question leads to deeper learning?
Type B.
Yes, yes. Yes, B. B is open, exploratory, creative, and builds competence. But the important lesson is this. Questions like B don't usually happen by accident. They are planned. And Scaffold helps us to plan them. Could we have the next slide, please? So, linking to competences then. Questioning strongly supports the development of key competences. Let's look at just 3 to begin with. Creativity. So when we encourage learners to generate ideas, explore options, or imagine possibilities. Critical thinking is when we ask learners to justify, analyze, compare, or evaluate. And learning to learn, when we ask reflective questions that help learners understand how they learn. When planning lessons, try asking yourself, which competence is this question helping learners to develop? So that's a question to prompt your thinking when you're planning, to help you to focus on developing those key competences rather than just memory, rather than just recall. So this helps to shift the focus then from teaching content, like the labels in the plant diagram, to facilitating thinking, much deeper thinking around how the plant works. So if we could move to the next slide, please, Ayana. So types of questions. Not all questions do the same work. And in the table here, you will see that we have set out 4 broad types of questions for you. The first then is closed questions. We have an example. What is the capital of France? It has one answer, right or wrong. It's just about recalling facts. So it can be, the closed questions can be useful as quick checks for knowledge. They're very useful to check knowledge like that, recall, and maybe practice over time can help to move that knowledge and those facts from short-term memory into long-term memory. Useful, but limited. It doesn't develop the full range of competencies that those more open questions can prompt. Which leads us to our second type of question here in the table, which is open questions. These invite explanation or description and prompt learners to expand their ideas. We've got an example here. What might happen if we change this? What if type questions? So there's not just one answer. There could be many answers. In fact, that is encouraged. But also it's much more exploratory. Open questions prompt deeper thought and a wider range of responses. The third type of question we have here then are divergent questions. So the question here, the example given here in the table is, how many ways could we solve this problem? So this type of question, the divergent questions, spark creativity. They encourage creativity through the development of multiple solutions, and there is no single correct answer. The fourth type of question then is we've got reflective questions, and these are questions which help learners think about how they think, that metacognition. And this is essential for lifelong learning. The example here we've got is, why do you think that worked? So looking back over learning experiences to make that learning visible and to bring to the surface the competencies that we are hoping to develop. A balanced mix of these types of questions, these four types of questions, supports competence development. Too many closed questions create very passive learners, not ready to think for themselves. A better balance creates active thinkers. Okay, if we could move on to the next slide then, please. So when we think about the pedagogical principles from Scaffold, the three I want to draw your attention to today are shifting the focus from teaching a subject to facilitating learning. So we're not delivering content. We're not just developing learners' knowledge. It's very much about facilitating learning through which learners practice and develop a range of competences. Okay, secondly, then the second pedagogical principle is place the learner at the centre. And again, when we think about questions, if we allow or invite learners to ask a range of different types of questions themselves, or if we ask those more open, divergent, reflective type questions, the learning can become much more learner-centered and led by learners themselves. And finally, then when we think about the reflective questions, this fits beautifully to the pedagogical principle, use reflection to enhance learners' understanding of how they learn and how they can control how they learn. So the Scaffold pedagogical principles then remind us that planning is not only about content, and they emphasize three key ideas. So that shift from teaching a subject to facilitating learning means that we guide thinking rather than deliver information. Also, when we place the learners at the center of learning planning, we can ask, what do I want learners to notice? What do I want learners to wonder about? What do I want learners to test? What ideas do I want learners to connect? The third, then, reflective questions help learners see how their thinking changes through learning, building that metacognition. When these principles are used together, they create lessons that encourage curiosity naturally. These principles remind us that questioning is not extra. It is part of the core design of competence-based learning. Okay, so let's have a look at an example in practice then. Could we have the next slide, please? Lovely, thank you. So let's look at how this works in practice. Let's imagine a real classroom moment. A teacher begins a lesson on forces by asking, what is a force? So learners give their definitions. Now, compare that question and the sorts of answers that learners would give to this question. How might we design a test to explore how strong different forces are? So I'll repeat that question. How might we design a test to explore how strong different forces are? Immediately, the classroom changes. Learners start predicting, designing experiments, debating ideas. And this is the difference planned questioning can make. It activates inquiry and ownership. Instead of telling learners the method or the correct answer, we shift to asking questions like, how might you approach this problem? What patterns do you notice? Which idea do you want to test first? Why do you think that happened? These questions turn the learning activity into an inquiry, where learners can explore and test ideas and make connections. The teacher becomes a facilitator of thinking rather than a giver of answers. So, if we can move on to the next slide, please, which is a short practice task. So I'd like you to each think of one topic you teach. So I'm hoping that you will all have a pen and a piece of paper just to jot down your ideas with you. But what I'd like you to do is to jot down one topic that you teach regularly. So when you think about this topic, can you write one question that you usually ask? So write down your topic, the question that you usually ask, and then also, can you rewrite that question to make it more open, more curious, or more creative? Okay, so I'd like each of you then to post your responses into the chat. Okay, so I want the topic, I want the question you usually ask, and then I'd like you to rewrite that question to make it more open, curious, or creative. So we're going to give you 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes to complete that task. So think of the topic, write a question you ask regularly, rewrite that question to make it more curious or creative. So if I give you some examples, for example, what is climate change? Is a straightforward question, but it's a closed question, isn't it? So after providing a definition, that's the end of that, really. That's the end of the thinking. So how we could change that question, what is climate change, to become, how might a 10-year-old explain climate change to their grandparents? So it's a much richer task. It requires much more thinking. Let's try another example. What is a fraction? Again, a closed question with a right answer, looking for a definition almost. We could make that question more curious and more open by asking, where do we see fractions in everyday life? And what problems do they help us to solve? Again, the difference between those questions is that the second question is open, it's much richer, it does not have one correct answer, it could have many different examples, and it makes a nice link between those real world, real life experience principles that we look for in the application of key competences. So please share your topic and questions in the chat. Once you've had a chance to do that, we'll have a look at a couple. Good. Yes. So on the topic of innovative technologies in teaching English, the question is, what is innovative technology in teaching English? A closed question, just looking for a definition, if you like. And so the rewritten question there is, what kind of innovative technology may help you ease your teaching? That's an open question. It invites many and different responses, can prompt curiosity and that critical thinking and reflection that we look for. I'll put an example in the chat now as well myself. Lovely. See, that second question is much better, isn't it? It's a much more effective question for competence-based learning, drawing on a range of different competencies and types of thinking. Great, thank you, Azra. Lovely, lovely. That's a great example of a question. And what I really like there as well in that example is asking that why. Because why really the why question really promotes curiosity, critical reflection. Why is that then? It's the hardest question. Why and how are very often the hardest questions. But if you wanted to make a question more critical or more effective, why is a good one. Nice, lovely. That's a great example. No pressure, Alessia. Oh, that's great. Yes, thank you. Good example. How are you getting on? That's lovely. So thank you, Moral, Gulnara, Sabina, Azror. Lovely. So we're just waiting for everybody else's now as well. Can everybody access the chat? Yes, Sabina, yes, please do speak. You're very welcome.
Thank you. I think that these kind of questions, they mostly functional literacy. We had courses on functional literacy, so you need to think how the definite thing may function. So as of your example about plant, how might a plant describe photosynthesis if it could speak? So in order to explain this, the person should understand the whole process of the photosynthesis and be able to explain it with her or his own words. So, and it makes them think more about the whole process, how the definite things can be done. I think that's great.
Yes, yes. Lovely. Thanks. Thanks, Sabina. Yes. Lovely. Yeah. So the question here then is, how are you? Could easily have a one-word response and would be a closed question. That's right. So has been rewritten to become, what interesting things happened to you today and how did you feel? Much broader question, much more open, prompts much better thinking, protocols there. It's a much better question, definitely. Even small changes can really open up big thinking. So we'll wait for some more ideas, some more questions from our audience. Thank you, everybody who has contributed so far. Got some more examples coming through. Would anybody else like to put their questions in the chat? I don't want to call on people individually in case you can't you haven't thought of one yet. But we'll wait a few more minutes for some more examples because I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potentially. 6 or 7 people left to add their questions. It's really nice for us to share these examples in this way because not only are you able to apply what we're talking about, the topic here, to your own practice, when you think about topics that you teach regularly, the questions you usually ask, and how you might apply the ideas we've discussed so far today to create more effective questions. So it's really nice to see different people's examples. Lovely, Sabina. Do you like picnics? Simple yes or no answer. Thank you, yes. So that's a closed question. Whereas we could change that to become, can you plan a picnic for us? So technically, can you plan a quick picnic for us? You could say yes or no to that. Yes, I can. Or no, I can't. But actually the process of planning a picnic would, of course, draw on a much broader range of key competencies then. Working with others, planning and management, working together, financial literacy, if you've got a budget, for example. So actually asking somebody to create the plan is a much richer task. So does anybody else want to share their topic and rewritten question? Silence was the reply. Because I can't see you. I'm not sure whether you're nodding or going, no, thanks. We don't want to share any more questions, thank you. But before I move on, Okay. Great. Okay, I'll move on then from this. Lovely, thank you. So let's move to the next slide then. So planning prompts for teachers. So when planning lessons, here is a simple prompt that supports curiosity. So what question could help learners notice something that they wouldn't see otherwise, potentially? What questions could help learners wonder about something, ponder and wonder, reflect? And what question could help learners to connect ideas together? So these three actions, noticing, wondering, connecting, these three actions create the conditions for curiosity and creative thinking. So try planning one question for each of those three actions. And even that small step can transform the learning experience. So what I'd like you now then in the chat to just give us an example of a question for one of those three actions. A question for noticing, a question for wondering, or a question for connecting ideas. So this is your opportunity to practice. So I'd like everybody to try and type one question in the chat, please. Let's try noticing then. Could everybody put a question in the chat for noticing? What question could help learners notice something? You can think of a topic. For example, if we think about the plant slide, labeling the plant, notice. Ah, great, okay. What do you feel when it's rainy? Yeah, lovely. What impact does this weather have on our mood? That's noticing something that we may not otherwise be aware of. Lovely. That's a nice example. Thank you. Could we have some more from some other people as well, please? It would be great if you can type in the chat if you haven't done already, but I'm very happy to get examples from people who have already contributed. So let's think of some questions for noticing things in the plant. Okay, so when we think about the plant example, what do you notice as differences between the top of the plant and the bottom of the plant? Okay, lovely. Thank you, Gulnara. Oh, yes. How much do you spend each week on coffee? Now, that's a good investigation because we think we get a coffee every day on our way to work. It might only be a small amount of money, but over time, over a period like a week, that money really mounts up. So it's worth noticing, actually, how much we're spending. Good. And Gulnara. Nice. Nice. Yes. Lovely. Good. Yeah, that's great. Any other noticing questions? Okay. How about one? Oh, right. We've got one from Morale. Thank you. Statements. Yes. Yes. Now that's more of a closed question, I think, in the sense that it would have a right answer, but it does prompt that noticing. It does prompt that looking in depth. So that's good. What about let's think of some examples of some questions that could help learners wonder about something. How much water do you think this plant needs to survive? There we are. That's a wondering question. Wonder. How much water does this plant need to survive? So that really prompts that curiosity, you know, that wondering, I wonder, really makes us think, and hopefully will encourage our pupils to want to know the answer, to want to find out the answer for themselves. Any other examples you can think of for some wondering questions? Oh, what do you think about rain in December? Yes. Or I wonder which month has the most rainfall? Any other wondering question examples that you'd like to share? Okay. What about questions that connect ideas together? Let's think. Connecting ideas together. What are the different ways in which plants use insects to help them to thrive? So that's a nice question, which connects together different ideas, linked to the plant example we had earlier. Any other questions you could think of around connecting ideas together? So those three simple prompts then: noticing something, wondering about something, connecting ideas together. Can you think of any examples? Any other examples, perhaps from your own topics that you teach, that would support learners to connect ideas together? Thank you, Gulnara. Nice, nice. That's an excellent question. Yes, open-ended, imaginative, good way. It's an excellent wonder question, but also prompts a learner to connect ideas together. What would you do if you were Cinderella? Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, lovely. That's a great question. Any other examples? Okay. So you can see then, so there are some very practical tips there around how you can build, plan for and build questions using different types of questions. So open questions, closed questions, divergent questions, and reflective questions. Lovely. What will you do if you're lost? That's a great question. Yeah, where to start? Lovely. But also then, that prompt that we have on screen now at the moment is also useful because it makes us remember and focus on the types of thinking that we want our learners to do as a part of competence-based learning. So we want them to notice, to see things in new and different ways. We want them to wonder about things. We want them to ask a range of different types of questions. We can prompt their thinking by asking a range of different questions. And ideally, we would like them to connect their ideas together in creative ways. Azrul, yes, what's the What have we got there? Lovely. That's an excellent question. Yes, thank you for continuing the plant theme, Azra. Brilliant. Yes, exactly. That's lovely. That's a really good question. Thank you. Anybody else want to share a question? Okay, if we could have the next slide then, please. So before we finish then, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. In the chat, now I know you from today's session, I get the impression you're not that happy to type in the chat, but this is the last time I'm going to ask you to type in the chat for today's session. Thank you everybody for your contributions so far. But in the chat, please type a word to describe how you will change your questioning next week. So it might be open, creative, why, explore, or another word that captures your intention. So what will you do first? Following today's session then, and our thinking about these different types of questions, what's the one thing you could do first when you go back to your teaching in terms of how you use questions? So I'm going to pause and wait for some responses in the chat. Lovely. So ask more questions. Yeah. Lovely. Any other changes that you think you'll make to your questioning when you go back to class? Lovely. Yes. The types of questions that stimulate thinking. So that's those open, divergent, reflective questions. Lovely. Thank you, Azra. Anybody else? Divergent questions. Lovely. Yes. Good. Anybody else? One thing you're going to do differently next time when you go back to practice. Lovely, yes. So divergent questions to raise curiosity. Lovely. Yeah, that's great. So thank you for your contributions. These initial sort of thoughts show a strong commitment to planning for curiosity. They show strong intention, and intention is the beginning of change. So when you just go back and just try to do one thing differently, try experiment with the different types of questions, try using that notice, wonder, connect process as a way of structuring your questions. But thank you very much for your thoughtful participation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Victoria. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Хейзел, за сегодняшний вебинар. Уважаемые коллеги, спасибо и вам за активность и за то, что вы нашли время сегодня присоединиться к нам. Мы надеемся, что вебинар был полезным, интерактивным, что вы сможете применить представленные инструменты и техники в своей работе. Хотелось бы отметить еще раз, что материалы сегодняшнего вебинара и запись будут размещены на мини-сайте страницы. Также у нас подготовлен специальный раздаточный материал к данному вебинару. Он также будет размещен вместе с записью на мини-сайте DARYA SCAFFOLD. Если у вас возникнут дополнительные вопросы или вы захотите о вебинаре, будем очень рады вашим сообщениям в нашей телеграм-группе. Все ссылки сейчас активные расположены в нашем чате. И спасибо, что вы сегодня были с нами. Будем очень рады видеть вас на следующих вебинарах Дарья Scaffold. И желаем вам приятного вечера. До свидания.
Could we share the file before people go as a download? Sorry, in the chat.
Absolutely.
What we've done is we prepared like a summary handout for you, which you can download so you can save it with your materials, so that it just gives you those high-level prompts like the ones we shared in the presentation to help you to get started, and a reminder or a summary of all the main points that we covered in today's session. But thank you very much. Lovely to see you all, and I look forward to seeing you in our next CPD webinar.
Thank you. See you next time.